Oh, we have no foot thingy, so we're just
I feel
dangling.
like Edith Ann. You remember Edith Ann? And she would sit in that therapy chair and just go, you know. Oh, there's a thing. Let's find the thing.
Oh, there it is.
On the side. My visual spatial is not operating well. Oh, there you go. Should we do yours too?
Yeah, I don't want to be I don't want to be the only one dangling.
I think that those blue sneakers would become a distraction if they were just like
if I was just dangling.
dangling. Hi. Okay, we're settling. No, never.
So good morning.
Good morning.
So one thing that I noticed, and that before we get to our question and answer, I just have to ask one question myself, and that is, you may be the first person in television film history to portray both a first lady and a president.
I think I am. An accomplishment indeed, although we do need to footnote that they were both killed. It's very important. We've got to keep track of what we're doing to female leaders, both fictional and in reality. Oh my goodness sakes. Hi. Oh dear, yay. I just saw somebody I hadn't seen in a while. Wow. Hi, sweetheart. Oh my God, hi, Mom. So, yeah, I am the first, I think. Hopefully I won't be the last. Yeah.
Did you realize that when you took on the role in Battlestar that this possibility was there, or did somebody mention it later?
Someone mentioned it at a convention years later. It didn't occur to me. It really didn't occur to me because the First Lady in Independence Day, although she was quite amazing, was so brief that, she didn't become part of my internal experience, really and truly. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's certain roles that you work on and they become part of you. Or they pull up a part of you that was subtler in your internal mechanism. And then that part of you that they pull up, if you play them long enough, kind of stays with you as more part of your active personality. Thank God I haven't had to play any psychopaths. But I don't know what would happen. I really don't. But the First Lady in Independence Day, I really loved her, and I thought she was could have been quite something had we explored her. And I did love that she was independent. The world was falling apart, and she was still going to fly to L.A., yada, yada, do you know?
Absolutely.
I love that her dying words were calling her husband a liar. With love in her heart, but she had pluck.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and start our line over here. Please do so in an early fashion. No pushing, no shoving, no kicking, no hair pulling.
Come on now.
They will. They will eventually.
What's your name?
My name is Angela Christine.
Hello.
Hello. Hello again, Mary. How
Hi,
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So, as I said yesterday, the reason I started getting into cons was anime, and I really wasn't into the sci-fi genre, and it was Battlestar Galactica, and your role specifically as a strong female character that got me into what, the Trekkie, that just didn't appeal to me because it was so male-dominated, and then you brought that on. So my question for you in your Q&A is, now that we see that more female leads in the Star Wars, Star Trek, especially with Rey coming on, and we're raising daughters and now almost grandchildren, as we have ones going off to college now, what would you recommend that we share and to move on to even grow that even more?
It's a great question. I think it's really important that you take your daughters back to not only the early women leaders in Star Trek and that really science fiction has been putting strong women out there way before Laura Roslin. Laura Roslin just happened to be the first human, from the Earth president, that kind of thing. So I think people latched onto her leadership as more of a projection of what we're trying to make happen. But take them backwards, and then if you want to really do them a favor, take them back to the movies of the 1940s. Take them back to Kate Hepburn. Take them back to some of these women who were fully engaged in their intelligence, their humor, their beauty, and they had not yet been reduced during the 1950s. The 1950s took women in America, put us in little skirts with high heels and cocktails, and said, you don't even have to cook. We're going to give machines to do you everything. So what you can do for us, however, is look pretty, and we know the dark side. You know, you just look at Mad Men. So the 1950s was a really scary time, and we didn't realize what was happening. And we're finally, I think, recovering, or the beginning of the recovery process is happening. But take them back before then, because women historically, during periods of history, have had tremendous power. And if you understand the history of women and the way it's gone up and down, and you understand that some of the early cultures were matrilineal, then they will have a real grounding. And okay, this isn't just about my life and my time. This is an historical fight, I will put it that way, struggle, since the beginning of time, perhaps. And that'll give them a broader sense of themselves, I think. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
I'm Darren.
Hi, Darren.
So I loved the original Battlestar Galactica.
You did?
Classic actors, Lauren Green, Dirk Benedict, Richard Hatch. Can you just describe what it was like to work with Richard Hatch in his final years before he passed?
It's so hard to talk about Richard Hatch, although he needs to be talked about a lot. He was a completely elegant, rather chatty, as we all know, right? Know and loved. I mean, you know, you asked Richard a question, and thank God he was handsome and charming, because you were still standing there half an hour later, and you'd gone all over the place, right? He had a brilliant intelligence, and it was quite generous. That's the thing. The word that he had an innate generosity in his spirit. So working with him was a dream. It really was a dream. I just, you know, he took that role. He took on the whole situation. He was the one that stood up at the first Ron Moore event when people were booing Ron Moore and said, don't do that. Of course, that was the moment where Ron Moore said, I got to write this dude apart. You know what I mean? So he did himself a huge favor, because it's one of the greatest roles he played was Tom Zarek. And he took Tom Zarek's intelligence into his heart and soul. It was beautiful to watch. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Christine.
Hi.
And yesterday we had a session with Edward James Olmos,
Yes.
one of your other co-stars.
Yes.
And he spent a lot of time sharing with us about his method for imbuing a character with backstory and creating tension on the set. And
Yeah.
he mentioned you by name, actually.
Oh, he did? Are you kidding?
So I was interested, what is your perspective on working with him and his methods for creating character and tension in the story?
I didn't notice any method whatsoever.
Oh, really?
So, and that doesn't mean there wasn't method going on. I mean, that is actually a compliment to his method. Whatever he was busy doing, all that I remember dealing with, and all that I do deal with Eddie, is a kind of a presence. He and I had instant compatible, ironically, because we were incompatible as characters at the beginning. But you know, when you're playing an incompatible relationship and you're not walking away hating the actor, you know that you have great chemistry. Because if you don't have good chemistry and you have to play that tension, you can walk away just thinking you don't like that person. You know, the mind is a very tricky thing. So back to his process, and I've heard a great deal about his process. We've done a lot of panels together, and I love listening to it because honestly, I never saw it. I just saw a human being committing 100%. I knew more about Eddie's process when Eddie was a director, because he would tell you and he would give you clues as to how he wanted you to think and perhaps open up. But when you're working with him, you don't see process, which is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know
All right.
many of you have seen Eddie and I do panels together, at least some of you, and he can tell all my stories and I can tell all his. So maybe someday I think I'll do a panel on Edward James Olmos' process. Wouldn't that be great if we switched? Yeah. Okay. Hi.
Hi, Mary. My name is Dexter.
Hi.
I have a question about a movie you did before Battlestar, before I don't know if it was before Independence Day.
Okay.
It was called Dancing with Wolves, where you played Standing with Fists.
Yeah.
In there, I think as well.
Thank you.
That was an awesome role, and that's also another strong woman
Yes.
in the situation. I just want to know how you processed that, and I knew that was a very grueling and awesome project to do.
It was. It was both grueling and awesome, but more awesome, you know. It was an honor and a privilege. This is basically what happened to me. The script was the script was unavailable to be read, which was the first shock. It was like, well, we can go in for an... Do you mind not videoing this? That's okay. Thank you, dear. I don't mean to embarrass you. What's your name? You're under arrest now. I'm teasing you, but I do have an airlock. Thank you, Micah. Thank you, darling. Really. I don't know why. I like to just be in the room of panels. We're so camera-centric now, and it feels better to me. So thanks. Stands with Fists. What happened was that I was asked to come in and read, and we couldn't get the script, and I didn't know how to read for something that you couldn't get the script for. It was like this craziness. So I went in and sat in the hotel room and read it in the outer lobby of where they were holding auditions. And it became very clear to me right away that I had to have this role. What also was clear to me, and I'm not sure why, was that her trauma around language, that her indigenous language, that the language that was indigenous to her, was traumatically blocked. And I couldn't get that off my mind, and I wasn't sure why it felt so personal to me, but it did. So even for my audition, I did that. I worked with language, even though they told me not to. They said, no one knows what she sounds like, so don't even bother. And I said, well, I don't really know how to audition for this without attempting to understand how English might come out. So I started with the trauma of not being able to handle the sound of one's own first language. And as long as I kept myself there, no matter what scene I was playing, she either blossomed beyond that in a scene, or she got stuck in it in a scene, or she would suddenly almost turn around and realize she'd left it behind. But if I kept in that original feeling, I successfully, I think, in most takes, found something very truthful about her. Why I understood that, I'm not really sure, because it wasn't really apparent in the writing. There's a little bit of it, you know. Stan says a few words of English. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't like this, you know. But I had an amazing language teacher, Doris Leader-Charge, who played the old chief's wife. And I don't even know if you remember when they were sitting around eating the buffalo meat after the hunt, and she was telling this long story in Lakota with this big gray and white wig and this huge smile. That was the amazing Doris Leader-Charge. She became not only our language teacher, but she was a mentor for me during the entire event and many years afterwards. But she ruled us in language class, like, like she really got down. But I was terrible at all the other things. I'm sure you know my nickname was Dust in Her Face. Because we would go out in the morning and ride bareback, and I would be terrified and holding onto my horse's mane, and the men would be galloping away, and I'd be like, you know, all that, right? So I was bad at that. I was terrible at bow and arrow. Terrible. I still don't get it. I don't like guns. So all day, like leading up to lunch, my self-esteem would be in the toilet, right? We would have lunch. Then we would go to Lakota language class. And I'd be like, I know how to say it. And I was like her number one student, I have to admit, because the guys, Native American guys, were from all over. Not one of them was Lakota. So that was not their natural language either. And they had not had opportunities to learn languages or had any kind of facility, because a lot of them had never even acted. So to learn a new language and then have to, it was, so I was able to shine somewhere. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have to point out, you were the first panel where, like, the fans who are asking question and answers are getting down out of the way so people can see, and it's super courteous. And I just gotta give it to you guys.
Yeah, well, once again, they know about the airlock. No, it has nothing to do with that. You're lovely. Okay, go ahead. Oh, no, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. What's your name?
Kevin, this may be a super geeky question, but I wonder if you could talk about the relative strengths and weaknesses of your character, her leadership qualities as president in Battlestar Galactica. If it leads to a discussion of the criminal justice reform efforts there, as opposed to a president administration, that's on you.
I see how you twisted my words, sir.
I was just going to say, and I have an airlock. Now, could you do that again? What is the question exactly? Because I kind of like this. I'm just not sure what you're asking me.
I'm asking you to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of your character, the president's leadership qualities.
Yeah.
Because she comes from being, was it a kindergarten teacher or something to?
She was the Secretary of Education, sir.
But it's frequently referred to. That's true. But they refer to her in dismissive terms as she had a former role.
Because they were men.
Exactly. And that's what I'm
That's what
getting
you
at.
want?
That's what I'm getting
You want
at,
some
is
of
what-
this? Oh my God. I like you, dude. Holy shit. Oh dear. I think what I noticed playing Laura Roslin, first of all, the idea of her being a teacher and Secretary of Education and being quite happy to be an educator and being devoted to it, we never heard about any of that. We learned about who Laura Roslin was through negative male projections onto her. So kindergarten teacher, she's a school teacher. Michael Hogan, I can still hear him. Oh my God. But the truth about that is the truth of what women face. And the other truth about it was Laura Roslin did not have ambitions to be president. So here was a woman being negatively projected upon, and she was not even sure of how to ascend to that position of leadership either. So it was kind of like the woman herself had to go very deep inside and work from her core. And I think fear did it to her. Fear, the terror of the loss of life, of the potential loss of the human civilization. Fear is one of, we all know some tragedy happens. Like, I don't know, we go through earthquakes in LA, we're terrorized, and suddenly we're operating at our very best for about 10 minutes. Everything gets clear. Do you know what I mean? Emergencies put us in the energy of presence. And that's what happened to her. is she was so frightened. Every time I look at that scene where she's accepting her position and swearing on, the woman is terrified. I didn't realize how scared she was until I watched her. I don't know who she is, but this is the life of an actress. So her coming to some of the decisions that she had to make as president did not come from years of politics, did not come from, she wasn't running for anything. It was always about, what do I have to do here to save the most people, to keep us going? And if that means I'm doing something that under normal circumstances I wouldn't ethically want to do, agree to do, or even think about, so be it. So some of her choices, right, would definitely be something that she would probably, as Secretary of Education, go, oh, I don't like that. If there was another leader doing it and times were normal. But I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think it was bridged. Her actions were not always correct, but they were always clear to her to be the correct thing to do at the time. It wasn't political. Does that make sense? So how does this relate to criminal justice reform? We'll be here all day.
I just remember there was something about an uprising and they were trying to figure out how to
Yes.
negotiate with them, and did they have a different status in this new society? Could they get a second chance? There was that kind of thing going on.
Yes.
I was just making reference to there's
The
there's
border?
just interesting kind of parallels about.
Well, see, here's the thing about the whole show, is that right now I think the show, Battlestar, is coming into, I wouldn't say a rebirth because it never died, but it is becoming more relevant almost daily the longer we have the current administration, and the longer we ignore the environment, and the more exposed some of these issues are, what's happening in our prison systems, and the more we realize the overwhelming vulnerabilities of the Constitution. I think Battlestar becomes a very interesting thing to watch. And, that's a tribute to Ron, that he understood something about where we're headed.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a genius. The guy's a genius. I still don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's really fun. Anyway.
You did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was like Eddie explaining his process. No, I'm teasing.
Good morning.
Hi. What's your name?
My name's Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
My favorite name, by the way. Tis.
You are such a powerful and, in some ways, more importantly, a more genuine actor.
Oh, thank you.
And I love every single one of your performances.
Wow.
And so I wanted to ask, because there's not been a scene that I can think of where you have not owned the set. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of your techniques for just coming on stage and really just owning that space?
Wow. Thank you for that compliment first. I think somewhere in my process as a young actress in the theater in New York, it became clear to me, it became apparent to me that normal acting techniques didn't work for me. I would sort of flunk out of acting classes because I couldn't, it was too heady for me. There was too much conscious creation. And every time I get self-conscious in the work, whatever I have to offer that's innate disappears. Somewhere in all of that, I went into a process of Gestalt Therapy. I don't know if any of you know Gestalt Therapy. Yeah, it's great, right? Great technique. But what it taught me, what she kept teaching me, it was started by this guy, Fritz Perls. I go into the whole thing, but I won't. But the point of it is to begin to feel yourself 100% in the moment that you're in. So you've done all the research on a character. You've done your background. You've broken down the script. You know where the beats are. I don't know if I necessarily believe in beats, frankly, because you end up repeating things rather than exploring things. But then you go in there, and the idea is to not know what's going to happen, as opposed to coming in to execute something that you've planned and rehearsed and you feel confident, in quotes, about. Right away, you're eliminating everyone else in the room. You're eliminating surprise and possibility. So I think if I do have confidence walking onto a set, it's because I don't have an agenda that I have to stick to and fear that I'll lose. So that fear isn't necessarily always there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
Hello, who
Hi
do we
there.
have here? Hi, what's your name? Hi, Kira. Wow, I have a friend named Kira. Yeah, wow, I love your outfit. Do you have a question, or does your dad have a question? Okay, let's listen to your dad. And what's Dad's name?
Hi, I'm Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Hi. This is not quite a companion, but it kind of segues a little from his question. Because you've had an entire gambit in your career of roles. You know, different from sci-fi to drama. Through all that, I know you've done with your acting process. Did you ever have like a guilty pleasure moment with how you delivered a line or a particular scene?
Yes. Actually, I've had quite a few, but
Not asking for the greatest, just one good
just one. I'll tell you what. The movie Sneakers. Oh. Yay, right? Don't we love that movie? Oh my God! Is there anybody in this room that hasn't seen Sneakers? Oh, you're brave knowing I have an airlock. Well, no, please watch it. It's so much fun. It was the original hacker movie. It's got the greatest cast in the world that no one could ever afford now. Do you know what I mean? Back then they could. And just please, please watch it. I'm so proud of that movie. We love doing it. So what happened in Sneakers is it's about a whole lot of men, of course, and me. And I was always that lucky girl, I got to tell you.
Passport.
And no, it wasn't Passport.
Oh, okay.
Although that was pretty inspired, I got to say, yeah. So we're talking Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, Dan Aykroyd, James Earl Jones, David Strathairn. I could go on and on. It was the cutest, most handsome. Holy cow, right? So how does a woman hold her power in that room? Good question. At the very end of Sneakers, after we'd pulled off this gigantic caper, James Earl Jones, who's playing like the FBI dude, wants to give everybody something. We made a deal with him that he's going to owe us if we pulled it off, which we did. So he goes down the line of men asking them what they want, and they're asking for things like trips to here and there. So we read the thing, and we were getting ready to shoot that day, and I didn't have enough confidence yet as an actress to, when I first read the script, go to them and say, we've got a big problem. I didn't have that confidence. But on the day of the shoot, I just couldn't do it. I go up to the writer-director, lovely, amazing Phil Robinson of Field of Dreams, and I said, Phil, you go all the way down the line. James Earl Jones asks every single character what they want, and you never ask Liz. Meanwhile, it was her brilliance that helped solve it for them. She was an early STEM character. She was one of the first women in science, technology, engineering. She was an amazing character. And Phil Robinson, to his credit, said to me, I know, but I just don't know what she wants. And I said, just roll the camera and tell him to ask me. And he goes, okay, so these guys are asking for trips and boats and peace on earth. And he gets to me, and what do you want, young lady? And I said, oh, I'm fine.
That was improv?
I think I said that, or nothing. What did I say? I'm fine. And that line became like iconic. Like people talk about it all the time because.
I did not know that was ad-libbed.
Huh? Oh, yeah, it was total. It wasn't in there. There was nothing. She just disappeared into the woodwork. And I thought, after all these guys, like, they need their boats. She doesn't need a thing. And I thought that was like the coolest thing to be able to say is, frankly, she's the one that broke up with Robert Redford. Hello. That is a human being who's just fine. You know what I mean? Like, who would do that? I mean, I couldn't even say, when we first did the read-through, I couldn't even say my first line. My first line was to Robert Redford, and I was to say, we're not getting back together. What? I grew up in love with Robert Redford and Paul Newman, right? So big table, it's the whole studio's there, everybody's reading. We're coming to my first line, my heart is pounding, my saliva dries up, my teeth feel like they have little cotton sweaters on them, and I'm like, I have to talk. He says his line, I'm supposed to say, we're not getting back together, and I go, And the whole room howled with laughter, and Robert Redford, and this is why he's Robert Redford, he just leaned in and he said, what's wrong, Mary? And
I'm swooning.
I know, right? Now, I am not really a blusher, but I was as red as your shirt, sir. I felt a heat emerge in me that I don't think I've ever recovered from that moment. But I went home and I thought, this woman, Liz, has it together way more than I do. And that's where I began. I'm like, what does she have that I don't know about? It was just about everything. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. That little girl is so cute. Bye, Kira. Bye. Hi.
Hi, my
What's
name's
your name?
Jeff. Jeff.
Jeff.
But Ev is my dad's
I
name,
like it.
but-
It is? Wow.
Yeah, there's not
Ev
very many
is your
of them.
dad's? Wow.
Everett, yeah.
Everett.
I wanted to ask about BSG, of course. And when you were first approached about doing it, had you heard about the show that was on before, or were you a fan of it or anything? And did you have reservations about a redo? And did you think it would become as big as it is?
Okay.
A lot of questions.
No. They're all right in the zone. I had never seen the first one, nor have I yet.
That's good.
Hilarious. One of the reasons being, during the years that it was on, I was a stage actress in New York. I worked at night and had no TV. I missed a decade of pop culture, and that was right in there somewhere. So no, I'd heard of it, but no. When they told me I had an offer, I was like, for what? And the idea of me in space, it didn't make any sense at all. I mean, I was the Earth, I was the Native American. I was like, what? I don't get it. Then I read it. It was that simple. I read it. I said, this is an important, grounded, human, intelligent. It's extraordinary, and of course I want to do it. I just have to meet the men who are making it, because I'm still raising an adolescent, and I will be commuting to Vancouver, and they better be sympathetic to my coming in and out. Did I worry about a redo? Not for 1 second. Did I think it was going to be gigantic? Yes. It just was great. It was great writing. And when you see it, you know it. You just know it. And the only way great writing like that does not succeed is that everybody around it fracks it up. You know what I mean? Like, I would say the other one, but there are children. So, believe me, the F-bomb would be all over the room. I have no problem with that word. I wish it were true for all of us. So the thing is that when you read certain things, you just know, and then you meet the people. And when I met Ron Moore, and I met Michael Reimer, who directed all of our important episodes and became one of our, visionaries, at breakfast the next morning, it was clear to me that they were strong enough to make sure this was done right. Particularly Michael Reimer had a vision and a kind of Australian pluck that was not going to allow the studio system in the United States to kind of interfere. I just knew it, and David Icke, big fighter, you know what I mean? So you knew that okay, we're going to be fine. So that's really all it took for me. There was no, once I read it, there was no hesitation and really no fear. And you know, a lot of the times, I think it's a little true now, how do I say this correctly and honestly? The older I get, and the more power I've had in the industry, or less power, depending on the situation, and the more I understand that I am in a third act now, and that my choices are really important, and I don't want to waste any time. Now I look at these things and evaluate all of it. But when I did Battlestar, it was, this is brilliant, I want to be a part of it, make sure they're nice people, because I'm going to have to be commuting and they need to understand it, and I don't know how I'm going to make this work with my family, but because my husband is an incredible artist, we always made room for the good stories. So no, I thought it was going to be successful, and I wasn't afraid to do a reboot of what? I didn't know what the other thing was, for God's sake. And then Ron Moore said, don't look at it, you weren't in it. And I said, oh, there wasn't a female president in the original Battlestar Galactica? He said, no, there was not. And his whole idea of bringing the feminine forward and empowering them, I knew that would be really important in our culture. It still is. We have to keep trying that. We have to keep trying it, no matter how strong the backlash, and no matter that the backlash is in the White House. I'm sorry I had to say it. Okay, let's go. No, I'm not. Hello.
Hi, Mary. I'm Mike.
Oh, no, what's up?
Another one.
My favorite names keep coming up.
So I'm curious about how much information you had available to you when you first, were made aware of this role. Was it just like a summary of the character? Was it a couple, of the episodes, the scripts for them? Because I've always, been at enough panels, speaking with enough actors, that there always seems to be something that that particular actor likes, that they can grow with that character. It's more that I can do that. It's an easy paycheck kind of a thing. There's something that draws them that they can grow through it personally. So I'd be curious to hear you talk about that, what you saw based on materials.
Yeah.
And maybe if you have time, was there something as the show went on, something else that you grew, that you wouldn't have been aware of had you, just with the original materials?
Well, the thing that I knew was the thing that I think I mentioned before, Mike, which is I knew that I would be able to 100% champion a woman of my age and my generation suddenly having power thrust upon her and being ill-prepared. Because I was raised to, luckily, in a family of women athletes. My dad made sure we knew how to do all those guy things, like compete. You know what I mean? But the culture I was raised in was not raising women to be leaders yet. So I love the idea of honoring that gray area. And sort of the growth part of it was, what kind of president will she be? But honestly, I knew so little, except for the pilot, that's all I saw, that at the breakfast the next morning when I was meeting everyone to make sure that I was going to go, I said to Ron Moore, well, I just have one question, really. And he said, yeah. And I said, when does she die? I mean, is this a long role or a short one? Because clearly her first scene is a diagnosis of fatal cancer, right? And he goes, oh, no. She'll probably, no, she will pass away in the last episode when we find Earth. And I said, and what happens in between? Health-wise, And he said, well, she will have some periods of remission, and some of it will be familiar to us, and some of it won't. We'd never heard of Kamala. Do you know what I mean? That thing that she took and whatever. And I said, okay. I wasn't excited to play dying of cancer. Spiritually, emotionally, I was frightened of it because you do have to play games with your mind, and we do know a lot now about mind-body connection, and so actors have to be very careful. And I knew that she would be doing that potentially for years, so I went to a few doctors that I think are kind of inspired, and I got a lot of information. So I wasn't looking forward to that, but that's good because people who have it aren't looking forward to it either. And I learned it was very humbling, and that's always good for me. So that part was trickier, but the woman herself was a joy to play because she grew, and the idea, none of us had any idea that there would be a love story. No one. It was the last thing Ron Moore was thinking about at the beginning, was that these two old people would fall in love, you know what I mean? Like, that was not what he was thinking. So that was a joy for all of us, all the writing staff, everyone got so tickled by that as it began to emerge, and we could explore that. So some of it I knew about, and some of it I didn't.
Thank you very much.
I know, I have really long answers. Has anyone noticed? Just let me know. Just go like this. If I'm like veering off into kind of
Oh, we do have about like 5 more minutes, so these are going to be the last 3 questions.
Okay.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Not Michael, but Miguel.
Oh my God, this is my lucky day. I love this. I love this group. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think it's safe to say that all of us will agree when I say that you took us through such an emotional roller coaster. Each and every single episode, you've owned it, like you said. Has there ever been a time, off scene, whatever, where Laura Roslin's character just broke your heart?
That's a good question. Laura Roslin had a level of loneliness to her that made me very sad. And I never really, I didn't see it coming. But because I was up in Vancouver and I was separated from my family, even though Battlestar, as we all know, became family, and whenever you were on the set, you felt okay. But there were times during the playing of her where I felt her loneliness, her loss of her own family, her loss of her country, her loss of her reality, her isolation on Colonial 1 during season 1. I never got to work with any of the actors except for what's his name? Billy. Paul. That's not, I know who Paul Campbell is. I'm just old. Paul Campbell. There was a couple of people who came onto Colonial 1, thank God. But I was not over on the ship with the whole group, bonding and all of those things. I was a woman in isolation that they were calling a freaking kindergarten teacher. And I was in this plane by myself with a few extras quite often on the phone or something. And I was looking out a window, and all I saw was black and stars. And that's how I spent a lot of season 1. And then I would go home at night, and it would already be dark out. And so it was like, oh, I felt like I was in Scandinavia. You know, it's kind of like, and I thought, you know, this is loneliness that she carries. So the blossoming of love from that was incredibly helpful to me, Mary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Can you talk a little bit about...
What's your name?
Jasmine.
Jasmine, hi.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit about your current projects, including your podcast and the upcoming play you're doing in New Jersey?
Yeah. She's my publicist, everybody. Meet Jasmine. Give her a hand. If you don't know about Lady Bam podcast, there was a show I did, Major Crimes, for about 6 years. Thank you so much. And that was another great female leader who dies. Oh, well. I make a living dying. Let's just leave it at that. So, Sharon Rader, she was a great woman, but there were things about her. We wanted to know more about her as we were shooting. And so this idea emerged, and we decided to do a podcast. What would Sharon Rader do? And you would send in questions about the episode you saw, and we would answer them. And then that became kind of beloved by a group. And so they said, please don't stop the podcast. So we turned it into Lady Bam for Lady Badass Mary, because that's what some people started calling me. Well, I'll take it. I like it. And the difference is that I do the interviewing, and basically we break all the podcast rules. I apologize. We don't drop every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, and we don't tell you there's 10. We don't know when we're going, and we don't know when we're dropping, and that's how it has to be for now. But basically we go and talk to women, and Mina Sharp over here is our producer, and she is amazing at it. And we decide, well, let's go there, and let's talk to her if she'll do this. So, for example, we got to do this great interview with the amazing Stacey Abrams in Georgia. Yeah, right? Isn't she awesome? It's only a matter of time before she's running for president. I'm really happy it's not this one. And we jumped on a plane. Stacey's a fan of Battlestar Galactica. She went on her bucket list. She wanted to sit down and have a confab with Laura Roslin. And I happened to see it on Twitter, and we were on it like, Mina and I were like, let's move, let's move. And she said, yes, come interview me. I have a half an hour on a Wednesday. So it's that kind of thing. So come to Lady Bam, ladybampodcast.com, because we really are quite happy with it, and we love the women we're learning about there. And we do men too, but I think we've only done one, the great Tony Dennison. Yes, because he's too cute not to do. And he is. And what I'm about to do is I'm about to start rehearsal for a play that's being performed at the McCarter Theater in Princeton, so mccarter.org. And the play is called Gloria, a Life. It's written and directed by Emily Mann, who I've collaborated with many times. She's a genius. The play is about Gloria Steinem, and I will be playing Miss Steinem. And Gloria Steinem collaborated with the writer, and so she will be there. I will have to play her in front of her. Kill me now. Who asked me about moments when you're actually not confident? That's going to be a good one. I'm thrilled to be representing that woman. She has given us so much guidance as to how to navigate a world graciously towards the ideas of feminism. She truly dispelled an entire stereotype about feminists and who they were being told they were. And she continues to work on this planet for men and women and the human element. And she's this vibrant, amazing woman in her 80s, and she travels all over. And we're very, 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 very excited to do this play. So I'm about to play another really strong woman. So probably you should have an airlock, because if I get scared, someone better get rid of me. No, it's going to be really great. So thank you for asking that. Thank you. And we have one more.
All right, here we go.
Can we finish
Last
it?
question of the morning.
Hi, my name is Scott.
Hi, Scott.
My question now feels so...
Wait a minute, I just have to say this. I love that it's summer because you get to see all the fans' tattoos. I love your tattoos.
Thank
They're
you.
awesome.
Thank
Really,
you.
dude. Okay, go ahead.
My question seems very minimal now to that dialogue there, so
I'm sure
sounds
it's not.
Fantastic for the play. So as a huge Battlestar fan, and then I went back and showed it to my son when he came of the right age to be able to watch that. And I noticed a significant transition between season 2 and season 3.
Okay.
And I kind of went back and I took a look, and season 3 is when the writer's strike took place.
Yes.
So was there, I've always kind of built this bridge in my head. The entire show seemed to take a right turn in season 3.
What do you mean by a right turn? Politically right?
No,
or
no.
Oh, okay,
no.
just a turn.
Writing, right?
Yeah.
The writing itself. It seemed like it was very much on track to a well calculated season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4 sort of story, and then when you get to the point where you're on the planet, everything seems to go left, and the story changes quite dramatically and doesn't quite seem to know where it's going. And I've always kind of thought in my head, was that because of the writer's strike and they had to bring new writers in, or something like that? Like, there's a difference. It tastes.
Isn't that interesting? I don't know how to answer you that. Like, I didn't experience it quite that way. I do know that as the writer's strike occurred, we were approaching in the story utter chaos.
Right.
We were unsuccessfully landed on a planet that turns out was not Earth, you know. The direction we were going in the story anyway, was headed into chaos. It was headed into occupation. It was headed into, and we knew that that was coming. So I'm not sure that.
It could have just been the story.
I think it was the story.
Okay.
I don't think that there was a route that we were on that changed during the writer's strike at all. And in fact, we didn't lose any writers. They were all the same. All of us were on the picket line.
Yep.
And I don't remember us feeling that.
Okay.
So I do think, though, that the chaos of the story and the flip that occurred when President Baltar took over. Right. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, I would love to know about that year we spent in occupation. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's interesting to watch the story and to see what was going on in reality, and kind of looking at the two. There just seemed to be this connection. I've always kind of seen this like tie there.
That happens.
So, yeah.
That absolutely happens. It'd be a great question for Ron, because he would answer honestly as to what he experienced during the writer's strike that may have influenced the way he approached the arcs that thought he was going to write. And maybe he did make some changes, but you know, certainly I didn't know about that at all.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all
Thank
for
you.
sharing
Oh
our
my
morning.
gosh. Yay. Thank you very much.